What's up, everybody? Andrew Mahone here with Tricky Jim. Gonna be showing off a Sun and Moon on deck today. And this deck, I think, gains a lot with rotation. Ultra Necrozma GX Malamar. And it's not about what this deck actually gains in term of cards or anything like that. This deck had almost all the tools it needed for success out of the last couple sets. It gains a lot in rotation because there is no more Parallel City in format. A lot of the other decks also slow down considerably with no Professor Sycamore in format, with no N as well. Decks are just kind of a lot slower. The supporters aren't quite as good as they used to be. There is no more Parallel City to limit your bench. Granted, there is still Pseudo Wudo, but the difference between being limited to 3 and being limited to 4 when your name is Malamar is absolutely huge. So the format slowing down considerably helps this deck out a lot. Also, Greninja Break rotating helps this deck out a lot. We do lose Floatstone, and that is a lot to miss. So we definitely loved our Floatstone, but we have a workaround in Altar of the Moon, which gives our Psychic, our Pokemon with Psychic or Dark Energy attached to them 2 less retreat. So that does help with the mobility of this deck a lot, and we do still have good old-fashioned switch. I think this deck is very, very good with an unlimited damage ceiling, pretty much unlimited damage ceiling, and can contend with pretty much everything Sun and Moon on format has to throw at it. So let's check out this brand new list that Natalie Champay helped me out with as far as building for the Sun and Moon on format. Start things off, we've got 2 copies of Ultra Necrozma GX. We've got 2 copies of Dawn Wings Necrozma GX, kind of the tag team duo here. We've got 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX. We also still play that 1 copy of Mewtwo here with that pressure ability, but really you can kind of just insert your favorite non-GX option there, whether it just be the non-GX Dawn Wings or anything else. I personally like the Mewtwo there. We also play 4 copies of Malamar and 4 copies of Inkay. So a big 4-4 Malamar line, and unlike the previous format where you were constantly needing to discard these because of Parallel City, these guys actually get to stay in play. So that is amazing. Now we do miss our Professor Sycamore quite a bit. That is unfortunate for this deck. Professor Sycamore was the easiest way to get Psychic Energies into the discard pile in order for Malamar's Psychic Recharge ability to accelerate them to our benched Pokemon. But we do have 4 copies of Ultra Ball and 4 copies of Mysterious Treasure, meaning that we do have plenty of options to discard throughout the course of the game. Dawn Wings Necrozma GX and Ultra Necrozma are still as strong as ever. I think that Zoroark decks are still very good heading into next format. Ultra Necrozma GX is pretty good against Zoroark, especially now that Zoroark is just slower and doesn't have Parallel City, meaning that I think that Ultra Necrozma actually gains the edge here, where Malamar decks used to kind of be unfavored versus Zoroark. Now I think the favor goes to Ultra Necrozma because of that lack of Parallel City. Also, Dawn Wings Necrozma GX still hits Buzzwole for weakness, which is fantastic. That Moon's Eclipse GX, still an incredible GX attack. With Choice Band, you can hit 210, knocking out the likes of Lycanroc GX. You can also knock out things like Sylveon GX. You can also knock out things like Golisopod GX. Just a lot of Pokemon that have that 200 hit point range that you can hit with a Choice Band and Moon's Eclipse GX. But the great thing about Ultra Necrozma GX, I think, in the Sun and Moon on format is that unlimited damage ceiling. I think a lot of setup decks will start to see play that were not necessarily viable in the previous format. I'm talking about maybe Gardevoir GX, which could be good at Worlds, but I think Gardevoir GX gets a huge boost next format. I also think that Metagross GX gets a huge boost with Gardevoir GX getting big. Metagross GX also gets big, so I think that Having that unlimited damage ceiling is very good. Being able to hit those high numbers, 250 hit points on Metagross GX, you really want to be able to hit that unlimited damage ceiling. So I think Ultra Necrozma is perfect for that. And that is pretty much it for the Pokemon lineup. Here are 2 copies of Tapu Lele GX, allows us to continue to draw through our deck throughout the course of the game. And of course the 1 Mewtwo there, just to have an odd prize attacker there. Excellent in pretty much any deck. You want to have some sort of non-GX option for attacking. Of course, we play 4 copies of Cynthia. Cynthia is the go-to supporter in this format, and you pretty much start out building any Sun and Moon on deck with 4 copies of Cynthia. We also have 3 copies of Copycat, 4 copies of Guzma, 2 copies of Lily, and 1 copy of Judge. And of course, we do play Palpad in here as well. And I think Cynthia is going to be your main draw option. Lily is also a great option in this deck, especially turn 1. But also, since you do have 4 copies of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of Mysterious Treasure, Lily can help dig you through your deck as well. Now, you might notice, yes, there is no copy of Pokemon Fan Club in here for now. Now, we may end up deciding that we like 1 copy of Pokemon Fan Club. I think Pokemon Fan Club can easily get subbed in for maybe 1 copy of Copycat. I do like Pokemon Fan Club in this list as well. This is just our first draft list that Natalie and I put together, and we were thinking that maybe you don't need Pokemon Fan Club because you have 4 Ultra Ball and 4 Mysterious Treasure. However, if you do want to include Pokemon Fan Club, you could easily do that right here. That's just something to look out for. I do think every deck needs to play at least 1 copy of Judge. I could see more copies of Judge, maybe 2 copies of Judge in this deck, since once you set this deck up, more or less you can kind of function off a very limited hand size. All you need are your Malamars in play, and then your active gets knocked out, you can Judge, and then if you have a Mysterious Treasure, you can go get a new attacker and kind of load them up with your Malamars to finish off the game. So I think the Judge is very good in this deck, and we could definitely play a second. But Guzma is kind of the all-star. We want to be knocking out big Pokemon GX with our Ultra Necrozmas, and 4 copies of Guzma allows us to do just that, targeting down whatever you want on your opponent's side of the field, while also giving you valuable mobility, right? You need to be able to switch between the active and the bench in this deck because Malamar can only accelerate to the bench Pokemon. We've also got 3 copies of Copycat. Copycat's very good against Zoroark decks, which will often have a huge hand. And also in circumstantial situations, like after your opponent has used Tempest GX, has a big 10-card hand. You can either Judge them or Copycat them, get your own big 10-card hand. So there are definitely opportunities to use Copycat in this format. I think that Copycat's worth testing. You can also test out Tate and Liza, which gives you an option to shuffle draw 5 and also gives you the added option of using it as a switch. I do like Tate and Liza as a supporter. I think that it could be good in here too. So that's it for the supporters. Let's move on to the item cards. I'd said before we play 4 copies of Ultra Ball in here and 4 copies of Mysterious Treasure. Great options to go and search out your much needed Inkays. Play 2 copies of Choice Band, 1 copy of Palpad, 1 Rescue Stretcher, 1 Field Blower, 2 B-String, and a switch, as well as 3 copies of Altar of the Moon. So that's it for our items. Ultra Ball and Mysterious Treasure just make this deck extremely, extremely consistent. I really love the 4 copies of Ultra Ball, 4 copies of Mysterious Treasure. They allow you to churn through your deck, always have an out to a Tapu Lele GX, always allow you to have an out to your attackers, and allow you to set up your Malamars very quickly. And not to mention now, without Professor Sycamore, we pretty much need maximum effort on board in order to make sure that we can discard our energy for Malamar's attack. We also have 2 copies of B-String in here. We could play a third. I really like B-String just as an option if you happen to be on the back foot setting up or slow to set up. You can get right back in the game with B-String. Also, if you just need a little added boost, a little added energy acceleration to knock out something big like a Metagross GX, B-String is your best friend and can also help you search out your metals, your much needed metal energy for your Ultra Necrozmas. We have Altar of the Moon, which gives the Pokemon with Psychic or Dark energy attached to them 2 less retreats, so it doesn't give you free retreat, but I'm pretty sure, everybody in this deck has a retreat of 2 or less. So it effectively gives your entire deck free retreat if they have a psychic energy attached to them, which is very easy condition to kind of satisfy in this deck, but in some situations you're going to need just a hard switch. So we do have 1 copy of switch in here, which is situationally useful. We also play 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher. Since your Pokemon aren't getting just knocked off by Parallel City all the time, 1 copy of Rescue Stretcher is totally fine, as opposed to 2 back when you had to discard Malamars because of Parallel City and stuff like that. 1 wasn't quite enough, and sometimes you needed 2 copies, but 1 copy is just fine now. We also play 1 copy of Field Blower. Field Blower is much less useful in this format now that we have like counter stadiums. We don't need to remove float stones from Garbodors. We don't need to remove Parallel City, but 1 Field Blower is still a nice option to have. And then Pal Pad is great for being able to shuffle more supporters back into your deck. A lot of time you'll find that you just want to shuffle the good ones back in. You need like Guzma and Cynthia, or maybe you want your Judge back to be able to limit your opponent later in the game. Pal Pad's great option for that. And 2 copies of Choice Band to help turn your Ultra Necrozma's whatever in the world, Photon Geyser attacks, right? Your 2 energy discard Photon Geysers can go from being 180 to 210, which is great with that Choice Band on there. And like I said, also allowing your Moon's Eclipse GX to hit those awesome numbers as well. Hitting 210 is very good there too. That's it for the items. To wrap things up, we've got our energy in here. We've got 8 copies of Psychic Energy, 3 copies of Metal, and 1 copy of Beast Energy in order to get this deck up and running. And that's it for our Ultra Necrozma Sun and Moon on deck profile. Thank you all so much for watching the video. Let me know, what do you guys think of Ultra Necrozma in the comments below? You think this deck is good in the Sun and Moon on format? You think that maybe it could use a little more help? Do you think it can hang with the other archetypes that are sure to be good in Sun and Moon on format? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you all for watching the video. Make sure to like the video, sub to the channel, check out the Patreon stuff and the Etsy store in the description below. I've got the Misty Mats back in the Etsy store. If you're into that, you can go ahead and check those out there. Make sure to ring that bell. Peace.